Howdy, folks. Happy Tuesday. It's a slow news day. Nothing going on. We may have to end the show early today because there's just nothing going on in the league.
Yeah, it's one of those days.
Yeah, we may even cut the pre-show. Well, never mind. We'll go with it. Go ahead, Russ.
So last night at midnight, which again, I'm not sure why at midnight because St. Louis isn't that big of a time difference from the rest of the world, just an hour. Mets had fired their hitting coaches. Now, 2 weeks ago when I tweeted, fire Chili Davis, everybody's like, calm down, Russ. It's not that big a deal. It's not always the hitting coach's fault. And I'm like, okay. 2 weeks later, he gets fired. It's not just about Francisco Lindor either. Yes, is he 0 for 21? His last 21? Yes. But it's also about how the team's approaches at the plate, and for Pete Alonso to come up with a fictitious hitting coach that he brought up in a press conference 2 days ago and say that he's been helping with their approach, just actually put a magnifying glass on what was actually wrong with the team. I know he was doing it in good fun, but it also showed that he was reading social media and knew what people were saying. So the other thing is they've been leading runners on base like crazy. In that Phillies game, they left like 15. They're leading the league on runners on base, and right now they're into like legendary numbers for that. Like they might set an all-time record. So it's all those things, the low batting averages, and then Lindor that made it too much to ignore.
Okay, what is it about the Mets and their late night firings? They fired Willie Randolph at what, 2 o'clock in the morning when they
it was 2:30. They flew. I think they had to fly Omar, right? I think it was. Was it Omar or was it
Omar?
Yeah, it was. They had to fly him to get to him so they could do it in person. And I think he had to come out in the hotel lobby at 2 in the morning
and wake up
11 o'clock there and do it. And so that it's actually in my book. Numbers don't lie. It's actually in that, but it is kind of weird now that this seems to be like an SOP for them. Like, hey, we'll just do it at, let's say, midnight.
Yeah. And by the way, what we were talking about before, I looked it up. Last year, because of the 60-game schedule, the teams played against them, their own division and their counterpart in the National League. So it was the AL East and the NL East. So tonight, when the Yankees play the Astros, it will be for the first time since that playoff loss in 2019. So I would say that the fans will not be too pleasant. And what fans are there? Probably, I think it's about 10,000. I think it's 25%.
Well, as I pointed out to you, Yankee fans have a history of throwing things at players, and I think they probably have a plan. I'm not going to say what I think the plan is, but I'm going to say I think they probably have a plan.
Yeah. Now we'll be joined in a moment by Eklund and in a moment by Kevin Allen because of the events of the day.
I do have breaking news, and the chat room told me about it.
Mm-hmm.
This is big news, Mike. There is a list of bars in New Jersey now that are giving you a free beer if you're vaccinated. That is a fantastic.
There you go. Motivation.
That is tremendous motivation for some. I just think I have to say I never would have thought that would be what would get dangled to get more people vaccinated. But hey, good idea.
Okay, here's my little thing, and then we'll start the show. And like I said, I think we're just killing time until Kevin and Nick get here. But yesterday I had to have an MRI, which is never a pleasant procedure.
Well, not if you like to move,
yeah. especially if you're claustrophobic. But I'm not, so that wasn't. And it's weird. I don't know if you've had MRIs in the past.
I've had a couple. So music is the key. Music or whatever they put on.
Now, and thank you for leading me into where I was going, because they asked, well, what kind of music do you like? I says, well, rock, alternative or whatever. So, first of all, they give you the worst headphones in the world.
They do. They're antiquated because they come with the MRI, and the MRI machine's 20 years old.
Well, also, it can't have any metal in it.
That's right.
So it's got to be. Somebody was telling me it's got to be like a set of crystal headphones or whatever. I mean, I just know that the sound isn't great, but I can survive that for 20 minutes as long as it's good music. So they turn on the classic rock station in Buffalo, And the first song is Bob Seger's Turn the Page.
That's not a deep cut, Mike.
That's not a deep cut. No. It's This is not 97 Rock, which is which is the 50,000. Or no, it's not. It's a FM station, but it's the big classic rock station in Buffalo. Kevin, I'm just we're live here. I'm just telling Russ about my MRI experience. So they give us a pair of headphones. They asked me what kind of music I like. I say rock. They put on the music. There's like a minute and a half of commercials, which are always wonderful. And I'm sitting there with this thing banging away. You know how the MRI.
Well, you got nothing better to do but listen to the machine.
Right. And I'm trying to stay as still as possible. And the first song that comes up is Turn the Page by Bob Seger, which 30 years ago I liked. Now it's something that I just can't listen to anymore because it's just I've heard
He's
it.
big in Detroit, Mike. You're not going to get any help from Kevin on this.
No.
It's the song. Okay, so then the DJ talks for like a minute and a half, and the second song comes on. Jack and Diane by John Cougar Mellencamp. And I'm like, I'm ready to jump out of this friggin' tube from hell right now if I don't get better music. And then it's
you bang on the machine and demand it? Like
no,
you were hopeful.
I'm trying not to move. And then it's Elton John, I'm Still Standing.
Oh yeah.
It was just one bad song after another.
That sounds like Ben FM. That's what they gave you.
If you give me Supper's Ready, if you give me A Day in the Life by the Beatles, okay, I can survive it.
Actually, if they gave you Supper's Ready, the MRI would be over before
right, exactly. By Apocalypse in 9/8, I'd be out of the tube. But I mean, come on. But yeah, I couldn't believe the misfortune of the bad music that we had. So I officially killed time until we got back on the show. Okay.
It's funny. No, that's good because I wanted to bring up something in light of that too. Like, kind of, I think it's kind of important. So I had on Friday I had a colonoscopy done, which is my first one. I'm 53 years old, and I have been the kind of guy who like always has thought there's something very wrong. You know, as you guys all always think there's something very wrong with me. Okay, so I really, you guys have always thought that. So I've always, but I'm like, a bit of a hypochondriac when it comes to that kind of stuff, and every time someone would, I would always be like, I'm terrified of the colonoscopy and stuff like that. It's just like, And I put it off and put it off and put it off. And then the pandemic came and it's like, I can put it off now because that doesn't matter. Who cares? So I finally did it. And, and I'm in there with the doctor. And I said, I have some symptoms. He's like, well, you're also, you're past 50 years old, so those symptoms are kind of normal. I'm like, okay, cool. So he's like, if you don't have any real bad symptoms, the chances of us finding anything are like, one in like 5,000. So, so that kind of like calmed me down. And then when I got out of it, I went through it perfectly clean bill, nothing wrong at all. No issues whatsoever. And so I really kind of, and they said, for your wife who's doing it this week, it's like one in 20,000. It's even less if you have no symptoms. So do it. I mean, I'm not just trying to put out like as a public announcement, because I know we have a lot of guys who watch this. I mean, I was terrified. I was convinced something was wrong with me.
Yeah, but you're completely out when they do it.
Yeah, you're completely out when you do it. I mean, it's the best sleep.
I don't know. Really, I don't know where Kevin stands on this. I told you at Golf Air where I stood on this. I get the colorectal one, which is like 92, 93% accurate with none of that trouble. And I'll go with worrying about the 7% later.
Yeah, I mean, and that's cool too. Like whatever. But all I wanted to say is I've been so crazed about this. Like I've been so nervous about this because I feel like I'm important to my family and I want to be around and all this stuff. So it's just completely messed me up for a long time. Yeah, and I was really nervous going in last week to get this done.
I'm not important to anybody, so I'm
sure you are. Everybody out there is important to people, and what I'm trying to make this a public service announcement here, Mike, because I think it's important.
Yes.
But I really do, and I was terrified. Like I'm the kind of guy who like. This is the last time you're going to take a shower before you know what's wrong with you. This is the last time you're going to drive in your car before you know what's wrong with you. I'm like the kind of guy who does that sort of thing in my head, which really messes me up. So I was really, really, really nervous about it. The prep was the worst part of it, honestly, at the end of the day. It was like one day of just drinking, eating broth and Jell-O and stuff like that. But who cares? At the end of the day, I feel great because I know everything's fine. And it really is like an incredible relief to know this. And anyway, that's just something I just wanted to throw out there for the hell of it.
Okay.
Just thought it was worthy.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Because, I mean, no one can be more wimpy about it than I was. I promise you that. Not the procedure, just the results. I don't care about the procedure. Anyway, here we go. Hello, Hockey World. May the 4th be with you. It's Tuesday, May 4th, 2021.
I'm Michael Lagello, and if somebody wishes May the 4th be with you, I'm going to punch them in the nose.
I'm Russ Cohn from Sportsology, and I spoke to Eric at the rink yesterday, who refuted everything X said.
No, he didn't.
He did.
I'm Kevin Allen. I can't wait for this discussion.
We'll have this discussion for a second. I said after the show, and we forgot about the show, I think, that, when I played because there's a ball hockey league now, a national ball hockey league, and I played ball hockey with Eric for many years on different teams. We were competing. That's how we met, as competing captains of 6th grade street hockey teams, right? So this is how Eric and I met. So, and he's not a power forward in any way, shape, or form. He's not particularly. He'll say he's not particularly fast. He's not very strong. He has great hands. He's very good at deflections. He's very quick in tight, and has a pretty good wrist shot.
You're still leaving out the one word that you used.
You called him a wimp, Ack. You called him
him soft.
Soft. He's soft, and I think if he doesn't think he's soft, he's crazy.
He knows he's soft. He refuted that.
He refuted that.
Point blank. He said you over-exaggerated about the breakaway game that you would play, on how often he would score and how often you would stop him. He said you have exaggerated that too.
Bill and Melinda Gates got divorced, and now Ack and Eric.
No.
I went right to the source. He sits 2 seats away. I went right.
I know he does, but I'm telling you right now, he's wrong. I mean, I never saw him throw a hit ever, or even bump into somebody.
I asked him if there was video. He said there's no video. I said that's too bad, because we could have at least seen.
Anyway, all right. Well, that's fine. If you guys want to come out sometime, we'll videotape the next, because we do this. We still do this once in a while, like every couple of years.
Yes, I want to be out there to videotape that.
Videotape the breakaway competition. I would love to. He will not score 3 in 10. He never does. He never has. It just doesn't happen. All right, there you go. All right, here you go.
Doesn't happen. See, he added that at the end.
It just doesn't happen. It hasn't happened. All right.
Yeah, please.
We have a lot to get into today, okay? And there's a lot, and we have Kevin on for a very good reason, And if Kevin's here, it's serious, by the way. For that, if somebody texted me that today when they saw that Kevin was on.
Yeah, because Russ and I just speak of irresponsibility. That's why.
Russ, your job is just you guys just rip me to shreds. Kevin comes on, things get serious. All right, here's and this is serious, because Kevin wrote an article is going to come up a little bit later. I wrote an article today about the situation. And the situation we're talking about, of course, if you've been under a rock, is the Tom Wilson situation that's going on in the NHL. Last night, Tom Wilson, in the same play, had 2 really dirty plays. And I know we're going to talk about why they're not dirty or this, and try to justify them out the wazoo. At the end of the day, I kind of agreed with Larry Brooks that the NHL could have had a death on their hands. And I know that sounds like hyperbole, and Larry Brooks might be one who's sometimes prone to hyperbole, but I don't think he's all that far off. In my opinion, 2 plays, one that was like the first one on Buchnevich is easily a 10-game suspension right there. And it could, for a player who had no history, it would have been maybe a 5-game. For Tom Wilson, a 10-game. And then the play with the play with Panarin, grabbing him by the hair, pulling him backwards. Unfortunately, Panarin's quick enough to land on his shoulder, but he could have gone down on his head.
Yeah, but Panarin is out for the year. So
he's out for the year. It's only 3 games. I know people are freaking out about that, but let's be fair. He's still out for the year, and it matters. Panarin, is a tough character too. So that to me is a 10-gamer for most people. For Wilson's a 20-gamer. At least I thought he's got to be out for the season in the playoffs, part of next year, and I honestly thought the NHL should consider banning the guy, and or forcing him to go for reinstatement at some point. But but then at the end of the day, the results come down as a $5,000 fine, which, as one NHL GM put it to me, he said that's like $40 to you or me.
I don't even think it's $40. I think
it depends on the GM.
I think it's $10.
I think it's $10. So, Kevin, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, there's a lot to unpack here.
Yeah, there is.
Just before I came on the air, I talked to someone from the NHL, and he honestly thought that when the first fine came off, he thought that was for the Buchnevich, and then we were going to address Panarin later. That was his original thought. And then
that was his thought. Okay.
As time went on, he was stunned that was it. that we're done. And I'm surprised as well. Well, first of all, I'm not prone to hyperbole.
No, you're not.
And I thought because of his history, Wilson's history, and the fact that it was such a cruel, violent situation that really didn't need to occur. And I thought we would have a suspension that would last into the playoffs. Yeah. And, obviously when you're taking away playoff games, that's so much bigger than regular season games, especially for a contending team like the Washington Capitals. Plus, I think it would have had ramifications on Wilson. I couldn't, if he had been suspended into the playoffs, I can't imagine the Capitals would have just said, we're with you on this. We've got you back. But there is some issues here that I think we never sort of want to see. Like, I think it's really easy to say, well, we should ban him for life, or he should get a year suspension and all that. That's easier said than done. You're dealing with a guy's livelihood. He's represented by a union. It's kind of like the old legal saying: "There's what you know, and then there's what you can prove in a court of law."
Right.
And with these situations, there's what you know, what you'd like to do, and what you can really do, because he has rights. He has a union representing him. Mm-hmm. There's precedent that you've got to deal with. It's complicated. Like, it's not as easy as people want to make it out, to saying, just ban him for 30 games. The last time when he got a big suspension, he got 20 games. Well, on appeal, it went down to 14.
Right.
Those are the kinds of situations you got to factor in. Now, that doesn't excuse the fact that he only got 5,000, and the fact that they said that the Panarin situation was just a wrestling match that we see, or at least that was the rationale that I've heard, that the Department of Player Safety thought, look, it's just a wrestling match that ended up with him going down because he was the bigger player, was able to overpower him. And, well, that was such a dangerous situation. And you've got to factor in, when you're doing those kind of things, of what could happen. What if that happened on the street?
Yeah. Oh my God.
Pulled
him by his hair backwards.
I want Russ to go.
I agree.
I want Russ to go before me, but I'll just say that if that was a wrestling match, then Tom Wilson in that representation was Triple H, and he was doing a power bomb on Panarin because he slammed him into the ice.
Let me add one thing, and then to go with Kevin, to emphasize something that Kevin said, which I think is really important. He does have a players union behind him. I agree with you, Kevin. He does have people, but those players also represent Panarin, and that players union also represents those guys too. And for Larry Brooks to say something like this, to me, was also significant. Larry Brooks is a player union guy, as we know, through and through. That he has always been in every dispute on the union side with the NHL, I believe. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I think he's pro union. I think he's pro player.
I think that's has been his MO, and in a great way. Like, he is like the rebel from the 60s type character that does believe that, and I love that about him.
I have a couple things. The first one is just the hair pulling. If you do that in an IIHF game, which did happen in the under 18s, you're ejected. You're ejected just for the hair pulling.
Right.
So the fact that that's nothing, and they look at that as just simple wrestling, is crazy to me. I thought it would be at least 5 games. I can't believe it is just 5,000, and it was on Pride Night. And so, like, Stephen Valiquette, who works for MSG, appropriately commented, like, he said, you know what? I texted Colton Orr, but my feeling was this kind of goonery on Pride Night is a bad look for the league. And, of course, now afterwards with the suspension, it's going to be written about that way. It's horrible PR for the league. But Colton Orr said, hey, if I was around, even if I was in the press box, Wilson never would have done that. And he's probably right. But again, I don't think you should have to run the game that way anymore. I'm not saying fighting should be out, because I've never said fighting should be out. But I don't think you should have to run the game that way, where now, do the Rangers really have to bring up somebody? Because there's only 2 ways this can go. The Rangers bring up somebody and they try to knock the snot out of each other next game, or the Rangers try and outscore them next game. But either way, Wilson's won. And Wilson knew he won when he was in the box. So clearly it's on the league, because Wilson knew they weren't going to do anything. He had his jersey off. He was flexing. Yeah. He was very proud of himself.
And that is at the heart of my problem with this, because okay, and I just used my trusty calculator on my phone. The fine is 0.001% of his salary. So they can't fine based on on the player's salary proportional to the salary. It's a set rate, and that was the most that they could do. So the NHL looks impotent when it comes to that particular fine, but that was part of the CBA, and they really can't deviate from that. But this is my issue. We know that most teams don't have an enforcer on their roster any longer. The game has passed that by. You have 12 skill guys on there, or mostly 12 skill guys. Ryan Reeves in Vegas and a couple others, but Tom Wilson essentially can run amok like a bull in a china shop, can go unchecked, and nobody is going to do anything. And last night, what you saw was a result of that. You had, I would say, Ryan Strome and Temi Panarin were extremely brave in jumping on Wilson, trying to prevent him from punching Buchnevich while he's prone on the ice. And what did he do? He acted like Mongo in Blazing Saddles and shooed them off like they were nothing, and then slammed Panarin into the ice. Now, if the Rangers were in the playoff race, that just ended their playoff hopes by him slamming Panarin into the ice. And the NHL, this is where they look particularly bad. If they suspend him, you're not costing him anything. You're costing the team if you suspend him in the playoffs. There's no salary based on the playoffs. They could do what they did to Ty Domi years ago. They suspended him for the rest of the regular season, or rest of the playoffs when he hit Niedermayer, and then I think it was 10 games in the regular season that cost him money, cost him 10% or whatever of his salary. That is what they should have done. But Kevin, I want to get your opinion on this. What I think the NHL is risking here when it comes to a player like Tom Wilson is a retaliation like what happened with the Bertuzzi-Moore incident. You're going to have players that are going to be fearful of Tom Wilson on the ice, running amok, and they know that they can't stop this guy, and somebody is going to take a baseball swing to his leg or to his head or something like that. That's the only way they can stop this guy, and he thinks it's a joke because he's acting like Thor, flexing his muscles in the penalty box. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, I agree, too, that the added element to it was the fact that he thought it was such a joke, and he made a mockery of the game, and it was very disrespectful. I don't like this becoming sort of a mandate on the need for enforcers.
Right.
So let's not lose sight of the fact that it was one player behaving very badly. Cruel. And, he knew at the time that Panarin had jumped on him and he slammed him down. He knew what he was doing. He knew he was slamming that guy down. And, I saw that so many people pointed out that, he bounced him again.
He did.
Afterward, which to me is just, further evidence of the cruelty of the act. And that's what I don't want to lose sight of and make this like he wouldn't have done it. Yeah, he still would have done it.
Right.
Yeah. I have one suggestion that I think would work, because I usually hear this out of the Department of Player Safety, or a lot of times we'll just see a tweet or something on NHL Network with just a passage. Change the rule book, update the rule book. Now that this happened, make hair pulling an automatic ejection like the IIHF has, and say that now you can no longer wrestle with anybody on the ice. If you have to use that terminology, then use that terminology. But this should never happen again, and it should be in the rule book. There's too many things that happen in this league that are out in the ether and left up to the referees on a moment's notice to police.
But this is the thing.
Yep.
This is the thing. Wilson does not get it. He can be penalized, and he comes back and he plays the same way. They can suspend him for 20 games. They can suspend him for he just is going to continue to play this way. Now, the only
and he's a talented guy. He doesn't have to.
Yeah, if he just played hockey and was and played physically, he'd be he's a I don't know about borderline all-star, but he's a pretty good player.
I mean, he should be talking to Pronger. You know what I mean? Like Pronger had that element of his game too, but was not near and was talented, so it was not nearly this stupid. I mean, he's just
Pronger picked this spot. Pronger picked this.
Yeah, this is I knew Chris Pronger pretty well, and he did cross the line a few times, but not like this.
No.
Just the way Wilson has just gone so far beyond the line, and I did want to bring this up too because I think this is important. Like the Capitals bear some responsibility from this perspective. He's a leader on that team.
I know.
He is an alternate captain on that team. They have put him in that position, which really says we love how you're playing. Exactly. We love the respect you have in this room. Now, what I would say to Wilson is, if you stop being the presence that you are offensively, the Capitals are not going to be as forgiving to these antics. Like he can do what he wants because he is a very effective hockey player. Yeah. But as he grows older, and he's not as important to the offense, and he does things like this. Do you think the Capitals like to have to defend him? I mean, this is annoying to them too, I'm sure.
Oh yeah.
Kevin, I was going to bring up two examples.
Yeah.
Matt Cook, when he was at Pittsburgh, after whatever how many incidents he had, apparently they called him on the carpet. The ownership, I think Mario and the general manager said, you can't play this way anymore. And he was still cheap, but he didn't do anything that was completely out of the line, and he continued his career for at least a couple more years. Rafi Torres was slipping as a player, and he had an incident where I think he got suspended for 25 or 30 games, and that I think it was with San Jose. He never played again because he was a borderline player. Wilson gets away with this and gets the support of the Capitals because he's a good player, and you can see the support that he gets because their stupid Twitter feed last night.
Yeah,
that was out this glorification of what he did.
Yeah.
I mean,
if you don't know what they did, they put a picture of him after the win, like he was like the poster child for the win, and it said violence on it. It was taken down very quickly.
Yes.
But here's the thing that people have to remember about team Twitter accounts, because I've met a couple of people who run team Twitter accounts, and the NHL teams do not nearly spend enough time vetting who's running their Twitter accounts for the amount of influence that they have out there on the public. Like what they put out there, some of these people are literally bottom rung interns who are running these Twitter accounts, and it's absurd to me that that's not being run by somebody who has the ability to discern that's not right to put out his picture with violence on there as the victory. I'm sure that person has been fired. I would hope that person has been fired. But they did take it down to their credit. But my gosh, come on, that's another issue for another day. But I've been wanting to talk about that for a while. That the teams need to get more responsible with who they have running their Twitter accounts.
I agree, but in the summer of 2018. The Capitals signed Wilson to a 6-year extension. So he's got a long time coming still to do this in this league. And I didn't hear anything from the Capitals after this game from their management. I heard nothing.
Well, they were terrified.
Peter Laviolette's say that he just thought it was the normal scrum.
That's good. I did hear that. I did hear him say that. I did.
I don't know whether this would work, but if I was the Capitals, and even if I was in the Players Association, I would at least suggest this, and that is that it's time for some measure of intervention, and to the point where you'd set Tom Wilson down. And again, this may not work. But you bring him in and say, "Look, aren't you weary of this?" Because we all are, and it is disrespectful to the game. And let's figure out why you get in this situation. Is this an anger management issue? Is this a lack of respect for authority? Let's sort of get into why that, because, there aren't 15 players in this league who act like you do. You're unusual. And when you get involved in these things, they get out of hand. That not only are you crossing the line, but you're way over the line,
You're not close to the line. And I agree 100%. They should do that. And the reality is, because I think Wilson in his head, a lot of hockey players believe that they have to play with an edge to be good, right? So he's going to sit there and he's going to say that I've got to play with an edge. And that's just not what we're talking about here. Like, he's going to say that, and I've talked to players about that. This is not about playing with an edge. We have players who can play with an edge. This is about hurting people.
But he's not playing with an edge. He's playing over the edge.
Right. He's he's playing to hurt people, and the issue is like the lack of respect for his fellow players in the NHL is what really is just mind-boggling. Like, you know, because
that's to me, this is the difference between him and Chris Pronger. You know, I always used to say, and I wrote several times, that I never criticized Chris Pronger because he was exalted for playing right at the edge of the rules.
Right.
But we did. And Chris Chelios was another guy.
Right. Yeah.
We didn't just say, you know, we said basically, boy, he's a great player because, you know, he's right there at the edge. You know, I'm currently working on a book with Nichols, Bernie Nichols, and he talks about in a practice session beating Chelios on the edge and, you know, laughing about it and excited about that he beat him. And then on the next play, he took stitches, you know, in practice. You know, that's the kind of player he was. Well, you know, look, Chelios and those kind of guys, Pronger, they played on the edge. But, you know, they didn't go way over the line. You know, when they did go over the line, they made a mistake. You know,
and they were suspended for when it happened.
Here's a novel idea. If the Washington Capitals wanted to show anything about maybe they thought this was slightly in the wrong, sit him the next game against the Rangers so things don't get out of hand.
It'll never happen in hockey, Russ. It'll never happen in hockey.
They should say it. They should say it today. We are sitting Tom Wilson out for that next game against the Rangers because we don't approve of what he did and we don't want to see it escalate. That's what they should do.
A self-imposed suspension when they're 2 points out of first place again behind.
Whatever, Mike. But I mean,
no. I mean, I agree, but it shouldn't be it shouldn't be up to them. The league should have suspended him.
Of course, but I'm just saying, you still as an organization can do something about it, and they're not.
And I made the point. I sent some message to somebody who was in media saying, "Do you think Brendan Lemieux being on the Rangers roster would have made any difference?" And he said, "Brendan Lemieux, no. Nick Fatiou, yes."
Yeah, it would have to be someone like that.
I don't know. I don't even think that. I don't think Wilson thinks about repercussions. I don't think he's in that world. I mean, when you look at what he's doing last night, he is leaving. He's out of body experience.
I think Cole Noor was onto something, because when he said Wilson never challenged him, he obviously knows from experience, because Wilson does kind of look for those soft spots on teams and really picks on them. I don't think he's always he's never going to go after like somebody who's as equal to him. That's not what he doesn't generally do that.
That's one of the problems. With all due respect to Colton Noor, who I really
it is.
He was a great guy and fun to deal with, and a good fighter. But Tom Wilson isn't going to remove himself from a game to fight Colton Noor.
Right.
Tom Wilson is a top line player. He's got he's got 13 goals this year.
Well,
and this is also what I think is really important about the difference between Chelios and Pronger and Wilson is that when Chelios and Pronger went over the line, it was usually at some meaningful point in a meaningful game, not in a situation like this, which was absolutely a meaningful point, not a meaningful point in a not a meaningful game. Like Wilson could have really he could have easily been suspended and cost his team a chance to win a Stanley Cup last night by doing this.
No, that's exactly right.
And he didn't care. He didn't care if that was going to happen to him. He didn't care if he was going to affect his team that way.
He knows nothing's going to happen to him.
I don't think he does know. I don't think even in his wildest dreams he would have. I think in his wildest dreams last night when he went home, he knew he was getting suspended. I can't imagine it.
I agree with that. I think Tom Wilson thought he would be suspended. I think he thought, man, I could be in trouble when he thought about it.
Now the question is, in his mind, does that say, okay, I've got to cool it, or I'm going to keep going like a bat out of hell? And if based on the way Wilson has responded to every suspension and every rolled up newspaper wrapping him on the nose, he's going to keep going like this. And the only thing that's really stopped him this year is when they played the Bruins and he got called up by Trent Frederick, and Trent Frederick did a pretty nice job against him. It wasn't a knockout or anything like that, but he said, okay, I'm here, I'll fight you. Wilson was not as much of a factor against the Bruins after that. So I think there is something to say that if you have somebody who can stand up to him, you minimize his effect. But we know the NHL, Kev, is never going back to having a player on one of their 4 forward lines who basically is a designated rock'em sock'em robot.
No, that's true. I've seen both sides of this because I covered the league for so long. It's like I remember what it was like in have enforcers, and you had to protect your superstars, and it was a different time, and that's the way it was. But the game's different now.
Yeah.
And first of all, you can't afford to pay those guys to play 4 minutes a game,
right,
or 5 minutes a game, and there's a silliness factor to it that I think eventually kind of hit people that look, the guys that are fighting are just fighting each other, like it isn't, they're not going after guys who went after superstars. You basically go get their heavyweight because they hit your star. And, that really wasn't, preventing what they were trying to do. So,
yeah.
But, as I said, I don't want to lose. I mean, I understand why people want to make this part of the rules because it's a discussion always worth having. But I think this is about Tom Wilson. I think this is strictly about him and how he just seemed to lose control. And he's just too vicious. Like he's too cruel. And he knows when he lays these hits, he knows when he's doing things that, he couldn't walk into a hearing and say with a straight face, I had no intention of hurting him.
Exactly. It feels so premeditated. It feels premeditated. And here's the other thing. I talked to another person today about this who played in the NHL. Doesn't play in the NHL anymore, but he had a really interesting comment about this. What he kind of amazing about this, and I re-updated my blog and added this in there because I thought it was interesting. That Wilson never through this whole fracas, or whatever you want to call it, took off his gloves ever. Right? Through the entire time, never took off his gloves. Now I'm like that doesn't seem like a big deal at first, but it is a big deal in terms of the fact that this guy I was talking to says he believes that fighters now believe that if you don't take off your gloves and you just scuffle, you get a minor penalty. If you take off your gloves,
no, he's right. And that's why the rule book needs to be updated.
And that part of things is ridiculous. So he's not only he's punching Buchnevich, with his gloves on as well. He's grabbing Panarin with his glove on. Yeah. And the fact he never takes off his gloves, and some people are saying, okay, well, his stick gets caught under Buchnevich, and I get that his stick gets caught under Buchnevich, but then he's pulling his stick up like this on Buchnevich's neck, and they're like he's trying to get his stick loose. The play's over. Drop your friggin' stick. Why are you trying to pull it through the guy's head? It doesn't make any sense. Drop your gloves or you're going to fight. If you're not, there's no respect at all that can be given to a guy who so it feels like it's premeditated. He knows he's not going to get suspended or whatever if he doesn't drop his gloves.
And I do realize that the game has changed from 1993 or 1994, but I think that this story is sort of applicable. When the Leafs played Vancouver in the Western Conference Final, Gino Ojic was going at Doug Gilmour. This is sort of similar to what was going on in 93 when apparently Wendell Clark was going at Wayne Gretzky, and that's what had started the whole McSorley fight. Well, apparently Gino Ojic, who needless to say was a knuckle-dragging Neanderthal in terms of a player, he was going at Gilmour, and Wendell Clark skated by the Vancouver bench and says, you keep doing that, and that guy is next. And the guy he was pointing to was Pavel Bure. And the thing is, the Vancouver Canucks basically told Gino Ojic to cool it. I think the only way that Wilson stops is internal accountability from the team itself, from either the management or the players. If he does that and somebody goes at Ovechkin, he's a big, tough guy too. So
Ovechkin's a tough guy, though.
If somebody goes after John Carlson or Nicholas Backstrom or Evgeny Kuznetsov, Wilson, they're going to tell Wilson to quit it because they're the ones who are getting the negative ramifications.
Yeah, there's some certain things. It's just very extremely frustrating that this will go on right now, and kind of underplaying this whole thing is the fact that in this game, right, Ovechkin, who's been hurt, comes out, takes one shift and leaves, doesn't skate again, and it doesn't skate again for the rest of the game.
See now, but you know what the funny thing is too? Now, like Ranger fans. And I'm getting texts. They're all calling on this guy, Mason Gearston, to come up because he's a fighter. And again, that is only, if that is what happens and they start the game off with a fight, then we're back where we were in the 2000s.
And the NHL has to take the blame for it because if Wilson's on the ice against the Rangers, it's unbelievable.
I can't blame the Rangers if they call him up. I can't.
But Kevin, how important is it in this instance that this incident happened in New York at Madison Square Garden, and I mean, the center of the, sports universe. I mean, it's hockey, it's not baseball, it's not football, but it happened in New York and it happened to their star player. I mean, I think that, the Rangers are going to get their dander up. Not to say they're going to go at Wilson in this next game, but I think they're taking a mental note down the line.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. No, I expect to see. I mean, that is part of hockey tradition.
Yeah, for
there
sure.
will be some reaction to it. I mean, can you imagine if this had happened in the 1980s? The New York Post headline would have been "Revenge" or "Retribution." And
Kill them.
Yeah, something like that. I mean, that's just the way it was. Now the game is different, but that doesn't mean that there won't be some challenge or someone going.
Somebody might go knee to knee with them. Like somebody's going to do something.
I think there's going to be a lot of challenge. The reason I say that I think there's going to be a lot of challenges is because the Rangers don't care now. They're not in the playoffs. I mean, they're playing a meaningless game.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Which meaningless game in this situation is the worst possible thing you could have. Right? For the NHL,
you know what'll happen too. I mean, we've seen this before where Coley Campbell goes in and warns everyone before that there'll be serious ramifications,
Right.
And then what that does is delays the retribution. Then it just moves it down the road a little bit.
Yeah, and I'm kind of that too, because it's like when you say, well, it's like the scrum. It's like, well, yeah, the boys are in the scrum kind of thing. That means we haven't advanced at all, not at all. And this is a coach saying that.
Yeah. No,
and another person said one other thing I thought was really interesting, which is this. He said, okay, Wilson not getting anything from this incident means the next thing Wilson does could be it for him. And I thought that was an interesting twist on it because he says, because what's going to happen here is this big giant, because the NHL's released hell's fire, as I wrote today in my tweet. Like the Twitter world and everybody is completely. So Wilson now can't do anything, or else it could be a big problem.
I don't believe that at all. But
the Players Association will fight it.
Right, exactly.
Yeah,
I'm just saying it's a theory. I thought, and I think if they actually give him something, here, that just kind of ends it.
There are certain players that play the same way no matter what. They just don't get it. Now they're successful and they'll eat the fines and the suspensions to play the way they. Brad Marchand is going to be a cheap skate artist. He's a great player, but he's going to be a cheap skate artist till the last game he plays in the NHL. And Wilson is going to play this way. And the only way to stop it, I think, is internal accountability, or you suspend him for 30 games the next time he does something. But I don't think the NHL has the will to do it.
It's unbelievable. And the last thing I'll say is this. The last thing I'll say is this about this topic. I got this also that says, the Rangers will, there'll be Rangers retribution for sure. He said, but also Panarin's a very, very popular Russian hockey player.
Yes.
Around the league. And Wilson's got to play a lot of other Russian players, And
they'll take a shot at him.
As time goes on, he says Panarin is extreme. For what Panarin did has been viewed among the Russian hockey players, dealing with Putin and dealing with his family as an incredible feat. And he's got the respect of everybody.
Well, the team that has the most Russians is the Washington Capitals.
That's true, but
isn't that interesting? I know.
Well, we always know, from life, but certainly from sports too, that the truth is somewhere in the middle.
Yes.
Yeah.
Whenever we see these things, like when people were calling for him to be banned for life and everything, that's simply not practical. It's delusional to think you're going to ban the guy for life over that. But if we were to put a bunch of people in and a jury and say, what should we give these guys? The middle would not have been a fine.
Right.
You witnessed, what he did would have thought, oh man, that's just cruel. That's vicious. That's, that's well outside the bounds of what's acceptable behavior, even in a scrum or even in a battle along the board. So I'm surprised. Like I didn't think he would be banned for life. And I didn't think that necessarily that it was going to be another 20-game suspension, but I really thought there was going to be some hurt applied to him because of his criminal. That's terrible.
No, but criminal-like actions. I mean, these are criminal-like actions, Kevin. I mean, you can't get around that. I mean, they are criminal-like actions. I mean, like you said, if it was done on the street, it's a criminal action.
That's the wrong word. This is a hockey game. But for his actions there were too violent, even for a violent sport. He clearly was well over the line, and yet, for him just to get fined, like it's just, I just don't.
Yeah, because you're right. Every situation like this, you go in your head and you think, okay, there's a low end, there's a high end here. The high end is. I mean, I wrote banned for life because I think he should be just flat out. But I'm of course I know he's not going to be. And I said, but I felt like the NHL would ban him for the rest of this year and the playoffs. The low end in my head would have been like a 10-game suspension or something like that. Like that's where I would have gone on the low end to end up at $5,000 and no suspension.
Even banning him for the playoffs would have been a little different because it's so open ended. You don't know whether they're going to play 4 games or 28.
But the NHL has done that before. They banned guys for playoffs.
So yeah, well,
Can we talk about a happy story?
Let's go. Go ahead, Russ. Let's talk about hockey.
So I've been following Tyler Seguin for a long time. I remember one time interviewing him pre-draft. He just called me out of the blue because I was trying to get a hold of him, and I ended up interviewing him while I was parked on the side of the road. But ever since before he got into the NHL, this guy had a drive to be the best player in the league. Always wanted to be the best. Thought he was the best. Thought he should be the first overall pick. All that stuff, right? But this injury that he had was way more than just like a 6-month hip rehab. They did like reconstruction in his leg. Like I was watching him. He had really skinny legs on Instagram. If you go back and look at his Instagram post, and I've been watching him every step of the way. And I think it was his first shift that he scored on yesterday. And it was unbelievable the way he was able to move around. Like I was just like so happy for this guy because this is not an easy thing to overcome. You're also playing hockey. You're also somebody could take your head off while you're doing it, and this is a big thing for the Stars. Now, granted, they only got 1 point and Nashville still won. But even if the Stars don't make the playoffs, and they probably won't, this thing with Seguin is a big deal in the medical world as far as the comeback.
Oh, yeah, it's wonderful. I mean, it's incredible. And what they did, too, medically is just unbelievable as well. I mean, taking a piece of a muscle from someplace else, just like phenomenal. It's not like he's going to be one of us, like just walking and going to the supermarket. He's a professional hockey player. This has to be like an unbelievably tough thing to pull off and then to make it work. And I think what's really great about what you're saying, Russ, is that how much heat the guy was getting last year in the bubble, which was just getting torn to shreds. We really didn't know that this was going on, that this was happening. He's
not a guy that's a woe is me kind of guy. Right. Going to pop off. He is just going to do the hard work and then get back. And that's what he did.
And I always respect guys like that who, because he could not have played at all. Then he just would have been hurt. No one would have said anything bad about him. But instead, he goes in there and tries to play because that's the kind of player he is. That's the kind of guy he is. And he's gonna do what he can, even though he really wasn't good enough to make an impact necessarily.
Well, I have another feel good story, and that's Michael Hauser. In the nightmare season that is the Buffalo Sabres. They signed Michael Hauser, a goalie who'd played over 200 ECHL games and hadn't played in the AHL since 2017. They signed him as a third or fourth goaltender, just as depth for the Rochester Amherst. They've had 4 goaltenders injured this year. Dustin Tokarski being the last one, and Hauser at age 28 plays his first NHL game and makes 34 saves, beating the Islanders. So those are the stories in a night where we hear about Tom Wilson's idiocy. This is the story that should get more coverage, but of course, Tom Wilson gets more because I think it's sexier.
Well, it's not just sexier; it's dangerous. But I think this is a great story too. I mean, I just think everybody's. Good.
I've got a question for Russ. Today, USA, or was it yesterday? USA lost to Sweden in the quarterfinals of the under-18. And this is the first time since 2003, Russ, that they haven't won a medal. And was this expected? I haven't followed it that closely.
Well, I will tell you this. I don't think it was expected from the diehards that really love the team. But I did tell Shane Malloy yesterday, before the game, I felt like they could lose this game, and it wouldn't surprise me in the least. And it didn't. And it was they just didn't have good enough defense. Their top goaltender got hurt. He had been hurt once before in the tournament. So when that happened, that really hurt them. But they just, honestly, they played a lot of younger players, 22s and 23s, and that probably hurt them as much as anything. They just didn't have enough older players.
They are. I've heard some interesting things about this. Who's this 15-year-old kid playing for Canada, Russ?
Connor Bedard.
Connor Bedard, but I think Shane Wright's more worthy of talking about because Shane Wright's going to be the top overall pick last year. I did interview his agent last year. It's on Sportsology. The kid's a great player. Like Shane Wright had 3 or 4 goals quickly in this tournament, and he finally got back to playing again. Bedard looks really good, and he's younger, so everybody always gravitates to the younger and says, well, look, he could be, the biggest upside. But Shane Wright's been the most effective player, actually.
Yeah, I mean, Shane Wright is next draft.
He's 2022, and Bedard is 2023. So we're talking.
I know that's astonishing to me. Like this 15-year-old kid is making an impact,
and he's not a huge kid either. He's like 5'10", so it's not even like you could say, well, he's just bigger for his age. No,
surely he could grow. He could still grow. He's 15. We always say guys can still grow. He will still grow. Like he is 15 years old. I mean, you don't stop growing at 15 unless there's something going on with you. He's gonna grow. And just another Connor. It's pretty funny. And we speaking of which, we have to talk about the other feel good story, which is Connor McDavid, for crying out loud.
Why is that a feel good story?
It's an incredible story because what we're seeing right now, I think, is the best season by a player we've seen since Wayne Gretzky. Clearly,
no.
I think that I don't think there's any question. He's going to get 100 points in a 56-game season.
There have been Mario seasons and there have been Crosby seasons that I think you could.
I would not Mario. I'll give you maybe a Mario season, but I'm not going to give you. Crosby has never had a season that is this overwhelming. Like that. I mean, and Crosby's won. He's won, so that's what really matters.
Wait, so his 199-point season wasn't as overwhelming. Come on.
Crosby?
Overdo it. I think it's amazing.
No, Crosby didn't have 199 points.
No, I thought you said Lemieux.
No, Lemieux, I'll give you. Lemieux might have. Okay, so since Lemieux,
199-point season.
No, okay, so let's take out. All right, I said since Gretzky.
Yeah, I'm not going to give you Crosby, just because. I mean, we're talking points. Like this is pretty impressive points, but there's more to the overall game. Crosby's had this kind of year where he's been dazzling and just didn't probably have the points. That's all. Crosby's
best year was 51 goals, 58 assists, 109 points in 81 games.
But what I said was the dominating single player performance and that's really what I'm going to say. Crosby made his team better. Crosby won cups and all that stuff. But just from pure dominating single game performance,
you're just talking offense.
I'm talking offense, just scoring, spectacular, fun scoring offense. Okay. We have not seen this since Lemieux and Gretzky. This is absolutely the first time.
Entertainment value.
Yeah. Since Lemieux and Gretzky, and that's a long time. I mean, that's a long time ago. Now we're old. Lemieux and Gretzky was forever ago, 30 years ago, right? Like, I mean, when did Lemieux stop playing or Gretzky stop playing? I mean, we're being really significant.
Gretzky was 2000.
2000, so 20 years ago.
I think 99. I'm sorry,
but maybe 30 since Gretzky was putting up 200 points, right? So I mean, like, this is something. I mean, 100 points in a 56-game season is really incredible, and done with way less talent than Lemieux or Gretzky had. Like Lemieux and Gretzky had more talent around him than you're seeing McDavid, and Crosby had more talent around him than you're seeing McDavid has around him. So to me, just single, like, there's nothing like this kid right now, and he's entering another stratosphere. He's entering another level that is taking him beyond these players, the players that are around in the league right now.
An offensive player, yes, but he still needs to win in the playoffs to get the full effect. He does.
Yeah, I'm with you on entertainment value and offensive line. It's exciting because the difference is it's been a long time since we looked in every morning if we weren't watching to see how many points.
Yeah. And we have to, and I know this is a sore spot for Philadelphia Flyers fans who are watching, but Cole Caufield scores his second goal in overtime, second consecutive game.
He's phenomenal. Yeah.
Now I'm telling you right now, the Canadians are wholly, the fact that they're wholly dependent on a 20-year-old kid to score to provide them offense is a testament to the shortcomings of that organization. But he's doing it. He's actually doing it.
No, he is. And you know what? I had a conversation with a longtime Flyers writer in the box yesterday, and Caufield was brought up, and the guy asked me, "Hey, did anybody see this coming when the Flyers made the trade?" And I said, "Yes." Not only did I tweet about it and say it on Sirius, but other prospect people were saying this is the exact guy the Flyers need because they wanted a sniper. They could have had a sniper, but apparently the Flyers didn't believe in him, so they traded down, and there's now issues with Bobby Brink and his skating as to whether he'll actually even be an NHL player. And Cam York's a good player, but if it turns out to be a Cam York for Cole Caufield, the Flyers are going to lose out on this one big time.
Right.
I don't know about that yet. I mean, the Cam York could really be. I mean, Cole Caufield.
Cam York could be a great number 2 or number 3, but if Cole Caufield's scoring 35 goals a year, 80 points, it's a loss.
Is it better to have a number 2 defenseman or a 35 goal scorer?
Yes.
I'd rather have a number 2 defenseman than a 35 goal scorer. I would.
There's so.
Well, why wouldn't you? I mean, think about it. What, Kevin? Do you agree with me on that?
I'm with you on that. I mean, it just depends. We got to see Cam York.
There's lots to do there, but
sample size. I think you can't make a generalized statement, but we'll just have to look at the 2 players. But Caufield, has been very impressive, to be sure.
No, and I've watched both games, or the 2 of the games. I watched 2 of the games. I watched both games he scored in overtime. And the one thing I'll say about his game, and I was all for them bringing him up, and I think he definitely deserves to be there, and he's going to be a great player, and he's exciting, and I love the guy's attitude and everything about him. But the goals have come 3-on-3, and I do feel like that definitely has helped him a lot.
He did hit the crossbar 5-on-5 if that helps.
Yeah, but 5-on-5, he does. Watching him in college, obviously it's different. Obviously the level's way less, but he's going to take him a while to get to that. Eventually he will, but it's going to take him a while to get to that level of 5-on-5.
I think the issue there is that the Canadians do not have a center to get him the puck with regularity. That's the problem. If they play him with Suzuki, he's probably the only one on that team that can do that. And yes. He takes advantage of his big shot and his speed with the open ice 3-on-3, but they've got a weapon there, and they've got an effective weapon there, and he's 20 years old.
Yeah, I do want to point out something. The speed that you see now wasn't there a year ago. It wasn't. He got really fast over this last summer, like to the point now where he can go backdoor on some players in the NHL and they lose them. So that's
how cool must it be to be Cole Caufield right now? To be a Montreal Canadian, like pulling over that sweater and having like the city just in love with you, and you're just
smile on earth, like he's having fun.
It's just. I mean, I can't imagine a cooler situation to be in.
Like energizes players.
Well, it is when you're playing well, but it will be good. But the one thing about this, and I think Russ can verify this, even though we see him, darting around and that nice shot, and what made Caufield such a top goal scorer when he was at the National Development Program is he can get lost in traffic. Like he has this knack of there'll be a bunch of people and players and it doesn't seem to be anything there. All of a sudden you see Cole Caufield and he's all alone with the puck.
Yeah,
that's one of his strengths.
And he shoots from a lot of different angles. Like everybody's got their shot. Like Laine's got his shot, right? But Caufield told me specifically that he works on a bunch of different angles. Even when they think he has that shot, he's shooting it a different way, a lot of different times for a lot of different goalies because he does a lot of video work. He's a player that admits he does a lot of video work, where a lot of players don't like to admit that.
Yeah, that's really cool. I love the fact.
Guys, I'm going to have to run. We'll see.
Thank you, Kevin.
All right, see you, Kevin.
Thank you so much for coming on today.
That's a big thing. Like that's something where not many players have ever revealed that to me. Like, hey, they really look at those things.
I love because and what happens too often with these guys is that like there's just there's so much natural talent that they just figure that's going to be it. And they're going to go with it because they can score. When you can score 100 goals in any game in any league you're playing in, because you're that much better than everybody else. It makes sense, but I love the guys who. That's always a sign of a big star. Like that's one of Crosby's best attributes. Like Crosby always thinks there's something he can do better. Like every, and Kevin. I know I've talked many times with Kevin about this before because Kevin would interview Crosby every year at the new combine, whatever they have, the NHL event they have for the star players. And he would say, and his joke with Crosby every year was, "Well, what'd you work on this summer?" Because Crosby would have one thing he would work on every summer. Right. And he's the best player in the league, but he would have something. He'd face off, defense, shot, whatever it was. Stick handling, skating.
I want to say the chat room, Easy said something that is entirely true too. Even if you believe York and Caufield can be the same, Caufield sells jerseys. And Caufield would be a guy that would sell a ton of jerseys on the Flyers when they don't have many guys that would do that other than Carter Hart. Because when you start taking away Giroux when he's gone, there's not a lot of like super exciting players. Doesn't mean they're not good. Farabee's a nice player. He'll sell some jerseys, but he's not like Caufield. They're different kinds of players. And
the mindset of certain organizations really I struggle with. If you remember, Alex DeBrincat and Russ and I remember the 2016 draft when DeBrincat slipped into the second round, and we heard from we basically scuttlebutt from a number of teams saying like I know that Toronto didn't take DeBrincat when they had a pick in the second round because they had the top pick in the second round, and they took Igor Korshkov, who's no longer at the organization, and they skipped over DeBrincat. And the talk was, well, they drafted Bracco and Marner.
Yeah, right.
And another small forward, so we can't take another small forward.
Yep.
Hey, is that the same mentality with the Flyers? They took Konechny. They took.
I was told on the sly that had a lot to do with it.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of not believing in his full talent. Although Brink is only 5'8", but they had a second player, so they felt like with the value, then it made it more sense for them. But again, I didn't like it because while I think Brink is a nice player, I knew it's a little bit of a leap to get him to the NHL. Not for York, but again, there's not many guys who you could call bona fide goal scorers in this league, and Caufield will be one of them.
The Flyers for 2 years in a row, they had Alex DeBrincat sat there too, and they let him go by.
Oh yeah.
So they had the two players that were very similar, in that like size wise, scoring wise, and they let them both go by. And I remember being angry about both of them at the time. Really furious about Caufield, and I'm not like a draft guy, as you guys know. You guys are really great at that, but I just sitting there and saying, "Oh man, I can't believe the Flyers just let Caufield go." Just because even I knew, from talking to people around that.
I just want to go back to that day because we all saw it coming that he was falling to the Flyers.
Yeah,
and we all were saying, I think we even said it in between while we were waiting on Sirius, like when they go to back to the studio and we're waiting for the picks. We all expected the Flyers to take him. It seemed like the no-brainer of all no-brainers.
And in 2016, we were talking to somebody. Russ and I were standing next to each other, and we were talking to somebody, and we were saying, "I can't believe this team. I can't believe that team didn't take DeBrincat." And the guy we were talking to says, "Oh, he's too small. He'll never play in the NHL." And as soon as Chicago drafted him, Russ and I looked at each other and says, "You watch. This guy's going to score 30 goals." And
that time the Hawks were winning Stanley Cups. It was just
I'm asked by the chat room goalie FP if there's a guy like that in this year's draft. He's bigger, and it's Dylan Gunther. He's got an amazing shot. I think Beniers is a better overall player.
Yeah, he's a top 5 pick. Right?
I mean, I want to address one last thing, and that is, the race that's going, the Winnipeg Montreal race that we talked about before, making it more and more interesting now as it goes along because Montreal wins last night in overtime, and you don't think Matthews and Marner's through that? 2-on-0 breakaway. They're saying, you know what, we'd rather play Winnipeg. Let's let Montreal.
Please stop it.
No,
of course I don't think that's true, but people out there are saying it.
No. You know what was on the mind of Mitch Marner? Setting up Matthews for goal number 40 instead of winning the friggin' game.
Well, it worked out. But no one's going to complain because you give Montreal if that extra point. Why Montreal doesn't end up playing them?
I don't understand anybody, if you're a Leaf fan, that wants to play Winnipeg. I don't care that
they're terrible. Why would you not? I don't understand that, Mike. Have you seen them?
They asked me about Winnipeg, and I'll say the same things I said. I don't think their team defense is as strong as they could be. I think that they have some very good defensemen, and then they have at least one that doesn't play great defense. I think Hellebuck could be playing better, and maybe when the playoffs start, he will be. But I also don't think they're physically imposing on offense the way they could be. I don't think their bigger guys take advantage of that enough.
Oh, I agree. I don't disagree. I just think that the Winnipeg is they're like they're not Flyers level messy, but they're close. They're working their way towards it, and it's like this is a team that there is no reason that that the Jets are in the playoffs and the team like the Rangers have been playing so well aren't, because that's they're.
But when the playoff bell rings, they're still going to be dangerous.
They're going to be They have scored 10 goals. They've scored 10 goals in 7 games.
But it doesn't matter. I know. If they win one game, it doesn't. If it mattered, if that mattered, when teams went into the bubble and they were just voted into the bubble last year,
they were the hottest team going into the playoffs, and then they lost in 4 straight.
Yeah, the Islanders were on a streak of losing
I know,
but that was the bubble, and they were one of the best teams.
There were months that passed there, though. I mean, come on, there were months that passed between those things. We're jumping right in. We are talking next week. Are the Jets gonna be able to get this together by next week? I mean, are they gonna be able? No, they're not.
Yes, I mean, yes they will.
It's over, guys. It's over.
Over. He just wants to turn it on.
Here, you can have my sign. There you go.
There's no question that the Jets are not going to be able. We're not going to see the Toronto-Montreal series that we wanted to see.
Yourself. Now I get it.
No, but we're not going to see the Toronto-Montreal series.
Revenge, Mike. That's all this is. Simple revenge on us for being right.
Yeah.
No.
Yes.
Proving how obnoxious it is.
We are honestly, right. We're right. Yes.
What I'm proving. Well, yeah, you're right. Yeah, you're right. Like I'm going to tell you, I think maybe we're going to make the playoffs. And I'd be right too, right? Yeah. I mean, it's easy to say it's easy to be right on something that's going to 80% happen. For crying out loud, you don't get points for that. You don't get points for being right about something that's going to 85 to 90% happen or whatever it was. I'm just saying here that Winnipeg is going to finish in fourth place. That's going to happen. There's no two ways about it now. It's absolutely with the win last night for Montreal. It's done. It's over. That's going to happen because the Jets cannot score, and that is what the Maple Leafs want 100% want because they don't want a team. They don't want a team with good defense. They don't want to have to face Carey Price, who could turn it up. You don't know. They don't want to face Montreal, who is their arch rival from all these years. They want to face Winnipeg.
I mean, is Ehlers going to be back for the playoffs? That's a big thing if he gets. So that's a big deal.
Yeah, that's the.
Is who going to be back?
Nick Ehlers.
Oh yeah, Nick Ehlers is a huge deal.
Nick Ehlers, the Leaf killer, who's been scoring like crazy against them all year. A team that's got three good lines and a Vezina Trophy winning goaltender.
Scored crazy against them. They haven't lost to them. They lost to them once.
They've lost them 3 times in Toronto.
Oh, 3 times in Toronto. That's right. It's all in overtime, right?
Like Funky wants to know if can the Rangers still make the playoffs? Can you answer that?
No, they cannot. and I mean, but when you guys are ridiculous. You guys know you're ridiculous. That's what's so funny about it. It was. I mean, it's mathematically done. I mean, obviously, it's mathematically done. Before it wasn't. They could still make the playoffs. And and if the Islanders, if they sweep the Islanders don't sweep them, it's a battle. But it's not. So there you have it. And that's it. And that's all I was saying. That's all I was saying the entire time. Ugh. So annoying.
Okay.
So crazy annoying. That's all I was saying the entire time. Anyway.
I predict already that Eck is going to be picking an amazing amount of underdogs in the playoffs because it's too easy to pick the winner when they're an 80% chance of winning. This is my prediction.
That's why I've nicknamed Eck Mr. Counterintuitive.
I blew your socks off last year in playoff predictions, folks.
You probably did, yeah.
I absolutely did. I picked 7 of the 8 first-round series correctly.
Oh, boy.
Good Lord. All right. Is Dallas making the playoffs? No. I'm going to say no, but I'm definitely not going to say it's over. That's for sure. Just like I said, the Rangers weren't going to make it, but it wasn't over.
Just keep talking, Eck. It's fun to listen to.
Oh boy.
I'm turning red. I'm sorry.
Anyway, if you can possibly defend me, please defend me in the comments for those people who actually listen. And
ladies and gentlemen, Captain EO.
What I'm going to be doing is actually the ironic thing is that right now I'm currently doing a greatest hits of this podcast first for potential sponsorship, and so it's pretty funny. I'm finding some good moments, and
they're all mine.
I have not gloated about the Pens getting waxed last night. That's true. But their defense is their defense, and that you saw last night.
I think that's why they lost. But Eck, I do have a 1-minute thing to ask you because you're a goalie. I hate the rule that when DeSmith catches the puck in his glove, and just because they can look on video review 5 minutes later, it's 2 minutes later, but they can look at it and see, oh, you know what? It was over the line. He gloved it in the air. And the problem that I have is now do we have to? If they're going to do this, if they're going to keep doing this, and I know it's a rule. If they're going to keep doing this, they need to check now how deep some goalies' gloves are and make everybody's goalie glove the same depth. Because, again, I think it's kind of cheesy when you don't allow that goal. Because
you all remember the most famous one of these probably of all time that I can think of was the Danny Briere Lundqvist one with when Briere's on Buffalo and Lundqvist makes the save. We see the puck, we see the goal line, we don't see the puck anymore because it's in the glove, but it's got to be over the goal line, but they don't count as a goal because you can't see the puck over the goal line. That was still a moment that I could not imagine like with the laws of physics, space, and time,
Right.
There was any way that this could be a
Then
rule.
why don't we just have clear goalie gloves then if we're going to do it that way?
Why don't we just accept the fact that something that is past the goal line and the puck is in it is a goal? I mean, I just don't understand.
No, we can't accept it, but the problem is they're calling it 2.5 minutes later in a game.
Yeah.
By the way,
that's why
that picture that somebody sent us of a goaltender, all three of us, was that you, Ek? That picture?
No, that's not me. Mm-mm.
Oh, okay. Because from a distance, it looked like you playing street hockey.
No, I mean, I was wondering that too for a second, but no, I'm much taller than that.
I'm going to lobby for translucent goalie gloves, so this way, you'll know instantly.
Yeah. That was me. Goalie FV says that was me. There you go. That was you. It was cool. I thought it was me for a second because it's funny because I played street hockey during the draft in Montreal. I want to say. I played with a bunch of Montreal Canadiens fans. I played street hockey up in Montreal. It was a blast, and I looked kind of like what I wore for that street hockey thing. But I think it was the draft in Montreal. It was really early on.
What picture are you talking about, Mike? I don't even see
that picture right there.
Oh,
on Twitter. Yeah, no, that's it's funny. I did sport that Vic stick for a while. I have to say that goalie Vic stick.
One more thing about goaltending. Did you see last night? I want to say it was the third goal of the Benstrom hat trick. UC Saros has his glove medium. He knows Benstrom is the only guy with the puck. He knows Benstrom has gone high every single goal, and he never moves his glove to even try to attempt to save it. He kept his glove at medium length. Can you explain that?
I don't.
I know.
I don't. I saw it. I don't understand it at all. I don't.
Bizarre.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure. It is crazy. There are certain things.
I scored 2 on you high. Where do you think he's going on the next one?
I know.
He's going on your glove hand, right? So
Yeah, you know, and this it's just what happens a lot of times with these goalies is they're so trained now into being positional. Yeah. They just have their checklist in their head.
It's a percentage play when you can make a save 90% of the time instead of.
But you do have to take into account what a player's tendencies are. Like if he's shooting high on you and beating you high, or if
it's sort of like picking the opportunity that's an 80% chance of happening instead of a 20% chance of happening.
Yeah, but with that player, if he scored twice on you high,
he already had 2 goals at that point.
I know, but to me, you definitely have to. I mean, you have it in your head at least.
That's what I don't like about UC Saros. That goal. That's the reason.
Saros because of he's very small in size, because he's a smaller goalie. He definitely relies on a lot of that stuff and his quickness, and he is definitely prone to teams that crash the net. That's how Arizona beat him last year. Honestly, if you crash the net on Saros, the Predators' defense is designed to keep people from doing that on him. That's what they try to do. They try to keep people from crashing the net on Saros because they know that's a problem. Where with Rene, it wasn't. Because Rene was such a big goalie. So teams when they see Saros in there, it's even amplified because it's not Rene. Saros. Oh yeah, we're gonna crash the net. That's the first thing they say in that locker room. I guarantee it when they're talking about it. Let's go to the net. Go to the net. Go to the net.
Well, now I'm going to be like, listen, just shoot high on his glove because half the time he's not going to have it up there.
Yeah, if you're a goalie of that size too, like to play with your glove that low is really dangerous.
Yeah.
Plus, it doesn't seem percentage-wise to make any sense at all, really, honestly, because just because.
I get it. Funky's like he's been great the last 2. I get it, but in the playoffs he is not great, and these are kinds of plays that I think cost him in the playoffs. This
will be his real first playoffs, I think. And I think this is going to be the playoffs that we're going to see what he's really made of. Because
he's just keeping the seat warm for Askarov in a couple of years.
I hate to say this. I'd rather have Freddie Anderson than Saros in the playoffs.
Oh, I would too. I think I would too. But I'd rather have the Maple Leafs offense than the Preds offense too, though. So, hey,
you'd have that Thomas Greiss, but the German national team doesn't want him.
Right, there you go.
That's
all right,
a whole other issue.
All right, folks, that's all the time we have for today, and thank God it is. Let's just say this: without the buzz, it's just hockey. We'll be back again tomorrow to talk more about this stuff. See you then.